It's 2025. From a federal prison cell in Texas, Elizabeth Holmes is once again speaking to the world.
Theranos means being able to see the onset of disease in time to be able to do something about it.
In an interview, she insists she never stopped working, sketching ideas, filing patents, imagining new machines that could make healthcare cheaper and faster. At the same time, her partner, hotel heir Billy Evans, is raising millions for a biotech startup powered by artificial intelligence, a company promising instant blood analysis through light and data. To some, it sounds visionary. To others, it sounds like Theranos 2.0. How did the woman once called the next Steve Jobs fall so far? And why is she back? Let's take a look at how it all happened. Every revolution begins with a dream. For Holmes, it was the belief that a single drop of blood could reveal everything inside the human body.
People don't even know that they have a basic human right to be able to get access to information about themselves.
No needles, no lab visits, just a fingertip prick and a few minutes of waiting. The machine she envisioned, small, sleek, and quiet, would replace entire laboratories. To investors, it was irresistible, a device that could save time, money, and even lives. To patients, it was hope in a box. The promise was seductive, a world where medical testing was simple, affordable, and available to everyone. Holmes didn't just want to build a company, she wanted to change the world. In 2003, 19-year-old Holmes dropped out of Stanford University. She was intelligent, intense, and obsessed with the idea of eliminating needles from blood testing. Using her tuition trust fund, she founded a company she named Theranos, a blend of therapy and diagnosis. She worked out of a small office above a Chinese restaurant in Palo Alto, the heart of Silicon Valley. The early prototypes barely functioned, but Holmes knew how to sell belief. Her quiet confidence and icy stare convinced investors she was the future. She raised her first $6 million from family, friends, and venture capitalist Tim Draper. Soon after, she recruited Stanford professor Channing Robertson as her advisor, lending instant legitimacy to the project. Holmes studied her idol, Steve Jobs, the turtlenecks, the minimalist language, the obsession with secrecy. She began to speak in the same clipped cadence, often quoting him word for word.
You know, Steve Jobs was, I don't think there is another Steve Jobs. He was a phenomenal entrepreneur. We've got an incredible opportunity to try to uphold a legacy in Silicon Valley of changing the world.
To a generation raised on Apple's miracles, she became the new prophet of disruption. By her mid-20s, Holmes had built a board that looked more like a presidential cabinet than a startup team. Former Secretaries of State George Shultz and Henry Kissinger, retired generals and senators. Few understood biomedical engineering, but all understood power, and Holmes wielded it effortlessly. By 2014, Theranos had raised more than $700 million, reaching a valuation of $9 billion. Holmes was declared the youngest self-made female billionaire in history.
The youngest billionaire in the world. Mm-hmm. Is that heady when you hear that?
You know, it's not what matters. What matters is how well we do in trying to make people's lives better.
Yet years go by, hundreds of employees later, zero working product. How did she do it? Kind of like the AI situation we have right now. She spoke of democratizing healthcare, giving people control over their own data. Magazines called her the next Edison. She graced the covers of Fortune and Forbes, glowing under headlines like "The Breakthrough of the Century." Partnerships followed. Retail giant Walgreens announced plans for Theranos testing centers across the country. Patients would be able to walk in, give a drop of blood, and get lab results in minutes. Holmes's charisma was magnetic. She appeared on television in her black turtleneck, promising a revolution. Investors nodded, journalists applauded, and regulators stayed silent. For a moment, it seemed unstoppable. But behind the polished facade, the technology was falling apart. Inside Theranos headquarters, tension grew. Engineers whispered that the Edison machines didn't work. They produced random readings, sometimes accurate, sometimes dangerously wrong. When employees questioned the data, they were told to keep quiet or leave. Holmes enforced strict secrecy. Every employee signed an ironclad NDA, and access to lab rooms required special clearance. Even board members were kept in the dark. Investor demonstrations were carefully choreographed. During live demos, devices were often connected to pre-recorded results. Errors were disabled on-screen to avoid embarrassment. It was a theatre disguised as innovation. Some engineers called it science by stage light. They knew that most of the blood samples were secretly being tested on standard lab machines, hidden in the back room, machines Theranos publicly claimed to have replaced. But the illusion was too profitable to stop. Holmes had convinced the world that the future was already here, and no one wanted to be the first to admit they'd been fooled. By 2015, cracks were showing. A young lab associate named Erica Chung noticed repeated failures and manipulated data. Another insider, Tyler Schultz, the grandson of George Schultz, tried to warn his grandfather.
What was it like to be in that position where your grandfather chose to believe Elizabeth over you?
I was devastated. And I told him, I said, "You're choosing a criminal over your own family."
But was ignored. So he went to the press. At the Wall Street Journal, investigative reporter John Carreyrou began digging. He uncovered whistleblower testimonies.
The biggest problem was going live with blood tests that didn't work.
Fake demos, and unreliable results that risked real patients' lives. When his article was published, the illusion shattered overnight. Theranos was exposed as a house of cards. Regulators rushed in. Inspectors from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services found that unqualified staff were handling blood tests, data logs were falsified, and patient results had been quietly deleted. The agency declared the lab posed immediate jeopardy to patient safety. By 2016, Walgreens cut all ties, closing 40 Theranos centers. Hundreds lost their jobs. Holmes went from visionary to villain in less than a year. In 2018, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission charged Holmes and company president Sunny Balwani with massive fraud. They had raised nearly $1 billion on false claims and doctored data. The trial drew worldwide attention. Supporters called Holmes a misunderstood genius. Critics called her a con artist. Her lawyers argued that she was simply overly optimistic, a dreamer who believed too deeply in her own invention. However, emails, lab records, and testimonies told a different story. Holmes had silenced dissent, destroyed evidence, and lied to investors and regulators alike. In 2022, after a long and emotional trial, a jury found her guilty on 4 counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. She was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in prison. Balwani received almost 13. The fall was complete. The same media that once crowned her Silicon Valley's queen now replayed her downfall in slow motion. But history has a strange sense of irony. From prison, Holmes continued sketching ideas on notebook paper, dreaming of redemption. She told People magazine she still wanted to make healthcare affordable for everyone. She claimed to be working on new patents even from behind bars. Meanwhile, her partner, Billy Evans, began raising money for a startup named Hammonds. The company promised to revolutionize diagnostics using AI and lasers. Its proposed device could scan a drop of blood, saliva, or urine and deliver molecular analysis in seconds. According to internal documents, it used a technique called Raman spectroscopy, enhanced by deep learning algorithms to detect cancer and infections. Sound familiar? To many investors, it did. Hammonds began with animal testing and pet diagnostics, where regulations were less stringent and results could be obtained more quickly. Their long-term goal is to develop a wearable human health scanner within 3 years. Some investors walked away instantly, wary of the Holmes connection. Others, mostly friends and family, offered small amounts of funding. By early 2025, Evans had raised several $1 million. When questioned online, the company released a statement. Yes, our CEO, Billy Evans, is Elizabeth Holmes's partner. Skepticism is rational. We prefer to build first and talk later. The science, when ready, will stand on its own merits. This is not Theranos 2.0. Whether that's true remains to be seen. The Theranos saga changed Silicon Valley forever. It exposed the dark side of innovation, the hunger for miracle stories that make investors feel like pioneers. It forced the tech world to ask how so many brilliant people could ignore the truth in plain sight. Today, business schools teach the Theranos case study as an example of ethical blindness. It's no longer just about one failed company. It's about an entire ecosystem that rewards charisma over evidence and vision over verification. Holmes once said, "I wanted to change the world." And she did, but not the way she intended. Her story became a mirror held up to a culture obsessed with disruption. Now, as AI brings new promises of instant diagnostics and machine learning miracles, the lesson of Theranos feels more relevant than ever. Because technology doesn't lie, people do. And when ambition outruns integrity, even the brightest dream can turn into a cautionary tale. As Holmes counts down her remaining years, the world watches with uneasy curiosity. Will she truly reinvent herself, or will she simply repeat the cycle under a different name? Innovation always walks a fine line between genius and deception. Theranos crossed it. Maybe this time, science will lead instead of secrecy. The next drop of blood will finally tell the truth.